are you doing? Thank you, students, so much for joining with another math lesson with Mr. Whitford. Today, we are actually starting our brand new unit, Unit 5, called Rates and Proportionality. So far, what we've done in Units 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 have all led us up until this moment, practicing multiplying, dividing, combining like terms, talking about playing around with fractions, talking about which are rational numbers, right? Even the geometric figures that we dealt with, all of that stuff, solving one-step equations, have led us up to this particular unit of proportionality. We're going to talk about what is a proportion, how to determine something proportional. The keywords that you're going to see in this lesson: constant proportionality, unit rate. They're going to be repeated throughout the lessons. So some of the units and some of the lessons in Unit 5 may seem like they're echoing the same information. Take a moment to try to understand some of the key concepts I'm going over, and feel free to replay the video a couple times. There are going to be moments that it's going to seem a little confusing. It's okay. I can promise you, in one of the lessons out of this 8-lesson series, it's going to clarify and clean it up for you. I'm very happy that you joined us. If anything is confusing, as usual, you can always put the comments in Google Classroom or rewatch the video if you needed to. All right, let's do it. Let's dive into the lesson as usual. Take out your packets and join me at lesson 5.1, which talks about something called unit rate. Now, as you can see in this lesson, compared to any other lesson I've ever done, this lesson is a 2-day lesson. 2 days because we're going to take some time in class doing a couple different exercises, but also I believe the content that's necessary to be covered in this class will take us 2 days to really get through. Okay, we're going to find the unit rate of different real world scenarios. We're going to discuss what a unit rate is, how to determine if it's unit rate, and even what the word unit itself means. But let's do it as usual. Let's take the time to pause the video and work on the bell work. As you do this, try to show all of your work, as I'm going to show all my work in a little bit, to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay, as a hint, you can use cross multiplication. Solve for x, please. All right. I'm hoping that you had enough time to pause the video and be able to work on exercises A and B. All right. Now, as I mentioned, as a hint to you, I would recommend that you use cross multiplication to be able to solve for these variables. If you can identify the actual growth factor that's multiplying, then that works too. For example, what do you multiply 3 by to get to 15? You multiply this by 5. So in other words, you can divide 15. 15 divided by 5 will give you 3. 24 divided by 5 will give you this x. Now, that's one way of doing it, but I would recommend you practice your cross multiplication first. When I cross multiply, I get 15x is equal to 3 multiplied by 4. Sorry, 3 multiplied by 24, 72. Because I want to solve for x, and I know that this is multiplication, I need to do the opposite, which is division. I'm going to do 72 divided by 15, and that's going to give me my answer of 4.8. So if you got 4.8, you are correct. It's okay to have decimals. It's okay to have rational numbers, right? Let's look at B. We have 3/6, otherwise known as 1/2, is equal to 13 over what, right? If you want to think about what's half of 13 and recognize that may be 26, that's okay. But in other words, I am going to still cross multiply to show you the technique. 3 multiplied by x gives you 3x. 13 multiplied by 6 is 78. Because that's multiplication, 3 times x, I'm going to divide both sides by 3. I'm going to end up getting x is equal to 26. Okay, and these are our answers. As usual, I would like for you to practice, go back and just check your answer, make sure the two sides are equivalent. Now, we talked about this in the last lesson on 4.5, that when you see two ratios or two fractions set equal to each other, it's called a proportion. They're a proportion because it's saying one side is equivalent to the other side. They're exactly the same thing, being represented a little differently, right? So for example, 3 over 4.8 as an A is equal to 15 over 24. Those are proportional. They're the same exact things. How do I know if I do 3 divided by 4.8, 3 divided by 4.8, I get 0.625. If I do 15 divided by 24, I get 0.625. They give me the same exact thing. All right. Now, we want to discuss what is something called proportional. Well, we know what something looks like proportional, but there's also something called a unit rate. In class, we're going to take time to just play around with this activity 1. And we're going to determine how fast we can pass out papers. Now, we're going to pass out papers from 1 to 25, 28, whatever amount of kids are in your class, and we're going to record them. So it depends on how many kids are in your class, we're going to record that. So say for now, let's play around with it. Let's say there was 20 kids. 20 kids, 20 papers we passed out. This is a hypothetical, right? In class, we'll actually do the real amount. For now, I'm just doing it hypothetically because I don't have any kids. But imagine I passed out 20 papers, and it took me about, let's say, 52 seconds to hand out those papers. Took you guys a little bit of time because you're just taking your slow, sweet time to do it. You don't realize that Ms. Whitford actually wants to see how fast you can hand out paper. And I won't tell you that on the first go. I'm just going to say, all right, pass these back, pass these back, pass these back. And after the 52 seconds, I'm like, okay, cool. Everybody got a paper? Boom, I'm going to stop my timer. Now, I want to know what's the ratio of papers passed to time. And that ratio looks something like this, 20 to 52. That's the ratio right there, 20 to 52. That's our ratio of papers that was passed out and the amount of time to get that. So what is the time? The rate, what is the rate? Rate meaning time per paper. That's what I want to find out. I want to figure out seconds per paper. How many seconds per paper? Okay, even though the ratio is papers passed out to time, I want to do time per paper to figure out what actually was the speed that it took to pass out these papers. So otherwise, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say, okay, well, it's 52 seconds for 20 papers, right? What does that look like, right? Well, papers per second, right? So maybe I should figure out papers per second. Let's do that. How many papers are handed out for every 1 second? Let's do that. I prefer that better. And we'll probably do that in class as well. That's probably why I made it like that. So I don't know why I changed it up. So forgive me, right? Okay, if you notice when I wrote that fraction, I made sure I tried to include the units next to it. That's going to be massive in our actual findings today. Let's do papers over time. So 20 papers, 52. This is papers. This is seconds. Okay, so I want to figure out, this is my rate, 20 papers per 52 seconds. What's the unit rate? Unit rate meaning the bottom is 1 second. So how many papers per second? Now, how do I figure that out? I'm going to simply divide 20 divided by 52. So I'm handing out 0.38 of a paper per second, right? If I were to flip that around, ladies and gentlemen, the 52 divided by 20, what I'm saying is it takes me 2.6 seconds to hand out 1 paper, right? And maybe that's why I wanted to do seconds per paper, right? Which might be better for us, seconds per paper. So on your worksheets, just as a heads up, because as I'm doing it with you now, I'm going to change the way this looks, just as a heads up that this is going to be changed to look like this. Which means that this is going to be changed to be 52 over 20, which means this is going to change to become, this is going to change, I'm going to change the unit rate to include it as seconds over paper, which will be 2.6 seconds per paper. Right? How long does it take for us to hand out 1 paper? 2.6 seconds. Okay, that's what it seems like. Okay, and I would prefer us to do this way. So I'm going to change the way the ratio is written on the actual paper, and then I'm going to work on the actual the rest of it. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's do about 1 more of these so you can understand exactly what's going on here. And we're going to do this in class, so it'll be a little more realistic. So if you want to skip past this to get more of the realistic find, that's fine. right? But I'm going to do it again. So there's still 20 papers. The second time we did it, let's say we did it in 40 seconds. We got a little better. And because we're going to flop these, it's going to actually be 40 seconds to 20 papers, which looks like this: 40 seconds to 20 papers. Now notice I'm keeping the units next to it, right? Just like I did up there, right? This is seconds, this is paper, right? Both of these are correct, great, right? But if I want to find the unit rate, we're saying I want to figure out per paper, right? The word per paper is indicating I want to find one paper. Per paper means I want to find for every one paper, how long is it taking to be handed out? And I'm going to divide this. 40 divided by 20 is going to give me 2, right? So that's really saying 2. 2 what? 2 seconds. 2 seconds per paper. So I go 1, 2, somebody's got a paper. 1, 2, somebody else got a paper, right? And eventually maybe we'll get it down to having 20 papers handed out in 20 seconds, which looks like 2020, which means 20 papers, or 20 seconds rather, for 20 pieces of paper, which means what's the ratio here? The ratio is, sorry for that scribble, 1 second per paper. Okay, that's what this is meaning. All right, and we're going to play around with this in class just for the sake of doing something new for the first unit, playing around with something new for the first unit. But nonetheless, we're going to really take a time to figure it out, because I want to talk about something called the unit rate. I've kind of mentioned it a little bit here, but in observing the table above, would you say the rate at which the papers were handed out was the same each time, right? Would you say that that's the same every time? Would it be the same amount of seconds for one piece of paper being handed out? Why or why not? And we'll notice that we obviously got faster, we got better, and the unit rates are different. A unit rate is often a useful means for comparing ratios and their associated rates when measuring in different units. So we're going to end up talking about different units: seconds, carats, M&Ms, whatever unit at the end you want to name it, classroom, students, right? And we're going to find out the unit rate, which is the measurement for one of. See, the unit rate allows us to compare varying sizes of quantities by examining the number of one quantity per 1 unit of the second quantity. And we're going to talk about that more as we go into, okay? Let's look at the second page. So I'm going to go through 2 things here, okay? Before I do, give me 1 second. Let me just pause the video. So I'm back. Let's look at the modeling, okay? Just as a heads up and a spoiler alert, this is probably going to be the longest video I do. And I know you're like, Miss Weber, please, I don't want to be on here long. Just let me get through some of the stuff. It's just, I got to go through a lot of stuff. It's the first lesson, right? We need to find something called the unit rate. The word unit means one of something. As the definition indicates, we need to find one of something. And I'm going to teach you a quick way to be able to figure out what do they want you to find one of. For example, look at the very first side of the modeling. Look at that first side to the left, right? And we can call this modeling A, right? I'll probably make a note on this. So on your worksheet, I'll probably already say A. This one already say B. Okay, if we look at modeling A, we'll see it wants us to find the unit rate, and all it gives us is 420 miles in 7 seconds. And we need to figure out blank miles per hour. Do you see these 3 words at the bottom, miles per hour? And I'm going to highlight them because I would recommend you highlight them because they're important for us. They're important to understand, okay, what is it telling us to do? What does it mean? What is it really indicating for us to do here? And when you see miles per hour, it really means I want you to figure out how many miles for the word per, you can think about for 1 hour, right? So notice we need to find per hour. That means 1 hour. And that's a big deal here. We need to find for 1 hour. So how do we do that? Now I'm going to set it up to this. When you see miles per hour, it really means miles divided by hours. That's what this means. And specifically here for every 1 hour. Now, there's a way of setting this up. You can set it up like looks like this. So I'm just going to put 420 miles all over 7 hours is equal to, let's put a question mark here, question mark miles over 1 hour because it's per hour. So that's 1 hour. Now, with this situation here, I taught you can cross multiply here if you wanted to, and just cross multiply the actual words and then divide and you'll find the actual miles. So 420 times 1, 7 times x, so you get 7x is equal to 420. Then you have to divide by 7. Now, the easiest way to do this, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, is not cross multiplication. When you're finding the unit rate, the quickest way to find the unit rate is after you set it up the right way. You see it says miles per hour, put miles on top, hours on the bottom. Now you can just simply say, let me just look at the numbers only. And let me divide these numbers. What is 420 divided by 70? 420 divided by 7. So 420 divided by 7 gives me 60. And believe it or not, that's my answer. All right, let me try to explain this one more time so you can understand exactly what I'm saying here, okay? When you have to find the unit rate, it's saying find the unit rate. Okay, unit rate of what? Do you want 1 mile? Do you want 1 hour? Right, that's the first thing your question should be thinking in your head. All right, they tell me 420 miles in 7 hours. Got it. But they want me to find the unit rate. Unit meaning one of something. One of what? 1 of miles or 1 of hours? What do you want me to find 1 of? In this case, you go straight down to what they're asking you down here in the answer. Miles per hour. Set that up like a fraction. Put the first word on the top and the second word on the bottom. Notice how this second word says hour, not hours. It's singular, singular indicating 1 of it, right? And response, it could also say hours per mile. And that would indicate you're looking for 1 mile. Here it's saying miles, plural, per 1 hour. So you set up like a fraction, miles over 1 hour. And you say, okay, take my miles in the actual problem, put it over the amount of hours that's there, divide them, and your answer will be telling you what it looks like in miles per hour. Okay? Now, if you want to take a second to practice that, what I recommend you do is take a moment to jump down to this cooperative work and work on A through D. C is a little bit of additional work there, but try to do A through D to be able to slowly figure out what this is. Okay? Now, as you can see, even in your homework, you have a number of those problems there. Take a moment, recognize what it's telling you to do, okay? Because it's a 2-day lesson, that's it for first day. But now we're into the second day, and I need to go through, explain to you how do you do something called understanding the better buy. And this is not the first time you're going to see this. You're going to see this a lot more in the upcoming lessons. But I did want to take a moment to pause it and let you finish that. Even in your class, we're going to do cooperative work, and then we're going to work on homework 5.1. Now, there is some additional practice here on better buys, okay? For the sake of the lesson, actually, as I think about it, I am going to cut this out. I'm going to cut out the better buy, and I'm going to cut out the other stuff in this lesson as well. Let's end it there because I believe this is a good place to end the lesson. Even though there's a lot to cover, understanding it now, it's probably best for us to talk about finding unit rate, dealing with proportionality before we dive into something, understanding unit rate, better buy. All right, thank you so much for joining me with another math lesson with Mr. Woodford. Looking forward to talking to you in the next lesson. Thank you.